Please comment where you are watching in the world. I traced a wing of eyeliner the way you draw a compass point, hoping it would lead me somewhere good. The dress on my bed was moss green, square neckline, simple but intentional. Ianthe, I told the mirror, tonight you look like someone who belongs in the stories you've been inventing about him. On my phone, Corvin's profile glowed with curated charm. Brown hair, jaw sharp as a blade, a golden retriever licking his face, a pan of shakshuka captioned, "I'll split the last pancake if you make me laugh. 6'2" if that matters." A hiking cliff, a grin that looked like the kind that rescues you in the rain. I reread it the way people reread movie trailers and imagine entire plots. My friend Liz sent a message, remember the code. Basil plant if he's weird. Cinnamon if he's worth keeping. I snapped her a selfie, orchard. The green kettle was all soft bulbs and potted plants hanging like lazy chandeliers. I arrived early, sipping water and arranging my smile like silverware. When the door chimed, I looked up, and my heart dropped. He waved at me with both hands, a cartoon greeting forced into a human frame. The man was not Corvin, not the one in the profile. Hair slicked black, patchy. Jawline melted into jowls. A pallor born of screens and sleeplessness. His grin had the wrong owner. "Ianthe," he called too loud. I nodded, stunned. "Corvin." "That's me," he said, collapsing into the seat across from me. The sour-sweet reek of cigarettes and mint rolled over the table. "You look better than your photos." My rehearsed questions about travel and brunch shriveled. He flagged the barista and ordered whiskey sours for both of us without asking. "Extra sour." "Like your face," he chuckled. "You look different," I said carefully. He shrugged. "Those pics were from college. Everyone uses their best shots. You did too, right?" His eyes drifted down my neckline. His finger traced the air near my collarbone before I jerked back. The drinks arrived. I sipped mine like it was poison and antidote at once. He talked about crypto, passive income, content, stuff you wouldn't get. He bragged about bar fights he'd witnessed, imitating women with a falsetto so cruel it burned my ears. When I checked my phone, his eyes narrowed. "Should I be jealous?" he asked. "Kidding. For now." I sent Liz the Basil message under the table. "Get me out." "You never answered," he said suddenly. "Do I look worse than the profile? Or better?" "You don't look like your photos," I said. He smirked. "We're here. You'll like me after another drink." My phone rang. Liz. "The Basil's dying," she said, our code. "I have to go," I told him, standing. "No," he said flatly. "No, you don't." His hand clamped around my wrist. Damp, too tight. His breath brushed my cheek. "Don't waste my time like the others did." The cafe carried on, bulbs humming, barista pretending not to hear. I lifted our joined hands like a bizarre dance pose and said, "Steady. Let go, or I scream, and we'll see if crypto pays your lawyer." The students by the window turned. The barista froze mid-step. He released me, muttering, "Jesus," as if he were the wronged party. I walked out without running. Running makes you pray. The night air felt like a doorway to somewhere safer. Outside, I ordered a car and stood under a florist's darkened awning, heart battering my ribs. My wrist already bore faint purple crescents. Behind me, the cafe door swung open, and I froze. But only laughter came out, harmless, belonging to strangers. When the driver pulled up, I slid in and whispered, "Yes, I'm Ianthe." At home, I locked the door twice. My phone buzzed with 3 notifications. One from Liz, question marks, a basil leaf, a heart, a knife. One from the rideshare app congratulating me for going out on a weeknight. And one from an unsaved number. "You'll regret walking away." I stood in the kitchen light, staring at it. My wrist pulsed where his grip had been. I typed a reply I didn't send, "No, I won't." Then I blocked the number, reported his profile, and set my phone face down. When I finally washed the eyeliner away, the gray streaks ran like rivers across my cheeks. I lay in bed thinking of his fake photos, the shelter he'd promised to build if we got lost, the cliff, the dog that wasn't his. I realized I hadn't been lost at all. He was the one wandering, a lie dressed as a man. I built my own shelter that night, out of words and locked doors, out of the fact that walking away is not regret, it's survival. There's a special kind of humiliation that only comes from realizing halfway through a date that you're about to be scammed. And not in the Nigerian prince email way, not even in the fake concert ticket resale way, but in the kind of scam that has just enough plausible deniability to make you question if you're paranoid, or if you're just really unlucky. This is the story of how I went out with a man named Riven. Yes, that was really his name, and learned the true meaning of the phrase, forgetting your wallet. Spoiler alert, he didn't forget a damn thing. The night started the way a lot of bad nights start, with way too much effort on my part. I'm not one of those people who can roll out of bed and look casually perfect. Getting ready is an event, a ritual, a battle with fabric and eyeliner and hair products that always seem to conspire against me. That night I picked a dress that was just tight enough to say I tried, but not so tight that I'd spend the whole evening worrying if my stomach looked like it contained a bread loaf. Black, low cut, with a slit that wasn't so high it screamed desperate, but high enough to whisper maybe later. I poured myself a glass of wine while I was getting ready, a little pregame to calm the nerves. My roommate, Orla, sat on the couch scrolling her phone, watching me do my thing. "He better be worth all that contouring," she said without looking up. "He might be," I said, though even as the words came out I wasn't sure I believed them. I remember standing in front of the mirror, tilting my head, adjusting my necklace, telling myself, this could be fun, this could be harmless, this could be the story you tell at brunch tomorrow when someone asks about your love life and you pretend it's a comedy instead of a tragedy. By the time I arrived at the restaurant, a dim little Italian place with red candles on every table, I was almost optimistic. Almost. And then Riven walked in. He was tall, with hair that looked like he cut it himself in the bathroom mirror, but he wore it with the kind of confidence that dared you to question it. A crooked smile, a leather jacket he clearly thought was still edgy in 2025. He sat down across from me with a flourish, as if the entire restaurant had been waiting for his arrival. "Leora," he said, like my name was something exotic he'd been practicing in the car. "Riven," I said back, matching his energy. The first 20 minutes weren't bad, I'll admit. He was funny in a cocky way. Told stories about a road trip he'd taken, some misadventure with his car breaking down in the middle of nowhere, the usual date night anecdotes. I laughed, even when I didn't feel like laughing, because that's what you do. That's the dance. The waiter came by, and Riven ordered a bottle of wine like it was nothing. Not a glass, not even 2 glasses, but the whole damn bottle. He winked at me like we were co-conspirators. "That's bold," I said. "I like bold," he said. The food came, the conversation rolled along, and I started to relax. I let myself imagine, for a few fleeting moments, that maybe this was going to turn into one of those unexpectedly great nights. Maybe I'd go home with him, maybe we'd laugh about how awkward we'd both been at the start, maybe the universe had thrown me a bone for once. And then came the moment. The check arrived. The waiter set it down between us, discreet but deliberate. Riven picked it up, opened it, and made a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a groan. "Shit," he said. "What?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "I think I forgot my wallet," he said, patting his jacket pockets with exaggerated slaps. "Yeah, no, I definitely forgot it. Must have left it on the dresser." I stared at him. There are moments in life when your brain does that thing where it runs 2 tracks at once. On one track, you're trying to be reasonable. Maybe he really did forget. Maybe this is just bad luck. Maybe it's not a big deal. On the other track, your gut is screaming, this motherfucker planned it. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice even. "That's inconvenient." He laughed like it was a sitcom gag. "You don't mind covering, right? I'll get you next time." Next time. The audacity. "Sure," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? I wasn't about to cause a scene in front of the waiter, who was hovering politely 2 feet away, pretending not to eavesdrop. I handed over my card, tipped more than I should have, and smiled like it didn't bother me. But inside I was fuming. Here's the thing, I don't mind paying. I've paid for dates before, I'll pay again. But there's a difference between generosity and being played. And I could feel it in my bones. Riven had played me. We left the restaurant, and he had the nerve to suggest grabbing a nightcap at a bar down the street. "It'll be fun," he said, like I wasn't already seething. "Sure," I said again, because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. At the bar, he ordered another round, joked with the bartender, acted like the king of the world. When the check came, he did the same little pantomime. Patted his empty pockets, shrugged, gave me that crooked smile. "You've got this, right?" he said again. Reader, I paid. Again. By the end of the night, my card was smoking, my patience was gone, and Riven leaned in like he was about to kiss me. I pulled back. "I think we're done here." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean you forgot your wallet twice tonight," I said. "And I'm not interested in a third time." His smile faltered. "Come on, don't be like that. It's just money." "No," I said, standing up. It's respect. And I walked out. On the ride home, I replayed the night in my head, over and over, second-guessing myself. Was I too harsh? Was I paranoid? But then I remembered the way he'd smirked when he said, "You've got this, right?" And I knew. He hadn't forgotten. Not once. When I got home, Orla was still on the couch, waiting. "Well," she asked. I kicked off my heels and collapsed beside her. "He forgot his wallet." She snorted. "Oh, one of those." "Yeah," I said, pouring myself another glass of wine. "One of those." The truth is, it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. About knowing when you're being taken for a fool, and deciding you won't play along. About realizing that sometimes the boldest thing you can do on a date is not order the wine, not flirt back, not give in, but to get up, walk away, and let someone else pick up the tab for their own bullshit. And if Riven ever reads this, I hope your wallet treats you better than you treat your dates. Because it's the only partner you're ever going to keep. You know those people who say they're addicted to their phones, but they make it sound cute, like, "Haha, I check TikTok too much, guilty?" I met the real deal. I went on a date with a woman who wasn't just addicted, she was married to her phone. That screen was her soulmate, her therapist, her emotional support animal, and I was just a warm body sitting across from her. And the kicker? The foreshadowing was there all along, hidden in plain sight, right there in her profile, like the first 5 minutes of a horror movie where you already know the babysitter is doomed but she doesn't. Her name was Haley. Her profile had been slick in that artsy moody. We messaged back and forth for about a week. She was sharp, funny, the type who makes you spit out water at work when you check your phone in between emails. She roasted me about the tie in my profile picture. Who wears a tie outside of a court date? And I liked the bite of it. It wasn't boring, it had teeth. By Friday, she suggested drinks, and I agreed. Because I'm apparently the kind of idiot who ignores foreshadowing. I put way too much effort into getting ready. I know people joke about women spending hours in front of mirrors, but let me tell you, men can spiral just as hard. I stood there fiddling with my tie, adjusting it again and again, talking to myself in the reflection like it was an audition. "Mateo," I muttered, "she's witty, she's hot. She'll probably out-sarcasm you, but keep up and maybe this will turn into something worth writing home, or writing a blog post about." The bar was one of those trendy spots with Edison bulbs and menus that looked like they'd been printed at an art school. The cocktails had names like the Velvet Tongue and Daddy Issues. I'm not making that up. She ordered the latter later, with a wink, and I swear to God it set the tone for everything that followed. I arrived early because my anxiety likes to cosplay as punctuality. I ordered a drink, played with the coaster, checked my phone 3 times in 6 minutes, then she walked in. And listen, I get it, people rarely look exactly like their pictures, but she did. She looked better. Messy hair that was messy on purpose, oversized jacket falling off one shoulder, red lipstick like a dare. She slid into the booth across from me, smiled, and said my name like it belonged in her mouth. And then she pulled out her phone. Not to silence it. Not to tuck it into her bag. She propped it against her water glass like we were about to live stream a podcast. I thought, okay, maybe she's just putting it down. No big deal. People do that. But as soon as I started telling her about my job, designing apps, which sure isn't sexy but I can make it sound interesting, she nodded politely, glanced at me once, and then went straight back to scrolling. "Do you need to text someone?" I asked, trying to make it a joke. "Oh no," she said, thumbs flying, eyes never lifting. "Just scrolling." Scrolling. While I told her about my career. While I tried to be funny. While I tried to exist. The waiter came over, and she ordered Daddy Issues without even blinking, then pulled her phone up to photograph it as soon as it landed. Not even one sip before the Instagram story. She captioned it mood. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to lean over and write warning sign instead. "So you really weren't kidding in your bio about being addicted to your phone," I said, hoping she'd laugh, maybe put it away. She grinned. "Oh, I know, but it's kind of hot, right? Like, you'll never have to worry about me cheating. The only thing I'm loyal to is this thing." She stroked the phone like it was a cat. I raised my glass. "To your one true love." She clinked mine, then immediately turned the camera on us. Wait, smile. "Okay, do a funnier smile." "Okay, now look obsessed with me." "Perfect. Now pout." I had become Instagram boyfriend material before the appetizers even arrived. At some point, she did put the phone down for a few minutes. Just long enough to lean forward and say, "You look better in person. More edible." I laughed nervously. "Edible? She twirled her straw and dragged it across her lips slowly. What? You don't like compliments? I like compliments. What I don't like is compliments followed by another selfie captioned, "He's blushing, winky face." I wasn't blushing. I was questioning my life choices. Then she asked, "So Mateo, what would you call me if I was your girlfriend?" I blinked. Haley? She pouted. No, like a nickname. Something sexy. Baby? Kitten? Mistress? I nearly choked. Bit early for that, isn't it? Her eyes sparkled. I just like to know how creative a guy is. Shows me how he'll be in other areas. I tried. I actually tried. But every name I came up with, princess, trouble, sweetheart, she waved off. Too boring. Too cliché. Try harder. Meanwhile, her phone kept buzzing every 30 seconds, screen lighting up like it was taunting me. The breaking point came when I was telling her about the worst project I'd ever worked on, a grocery app that crashed every time someone searched for bananas. I was mid-sentence, actually hitting my stride, when she cut me off with a full-on cackle. I thought I'd been funny for half a second, until she shoved her phone in my face. Look, it's a cat trying to hump a watermelon. Reader, I cannot explain to you the level of humiliation I felt in that moment. To be competing with produce porn on TikTok while pouring my soul into UX design, it was like being heckled by the universe. By dessert, I'd surrendered. She ordered another cocktail, snapped 10 selfies, and even posted a poll. Hot date or nah? My blurred face was visible in the background. The poll ended 73% nah. And yes, she showed me. When the check came, she didn't even glance at me. You've got this, right? She said, scrolling again. I left cash on the table, stood up, and said, Yeah, I've got this. She waved, eyes glued to her phone. Text me. I didn't. But 2 hours later, she texted me. Not a thank you. Not a had fun. It was a screenshot of one of her selfies from the night. Captioned, You're lucky you got to sit across from this. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for nearly 40 minutes, which was ridiculous considering it wasn't a gala or a wedding. It was just a first date. But first dates have a way of feeling like auditions for a role you're not even sure you want. I leaned closer, tilting my chin, sweeping on one last line of eyeliner, like it was a battle stripe. My hair fell in waves I'd spent half an hour coaxing into place. The blouse I'd picked was silky, deep burgundy, with a neckline that skimmed just enough to suggest without giving away. I paired it with dark jeans and heels, casual but not careless. I wanted him to think I'd made an effort, but not that I'd stood in front of the mirror practicing smiles. His name was Rylan. He was very flirty on the dating app. The flirting part was what had hooked me. As I brushed lipstick across my mouth, I caught myself biting the inside of my lip, a nervous tic I hadn't shaken since high school. I wanted him to like me. I also wanted him to deserve it. The restaurant he'd chosen was one of those low-lit spots with candles on every table and bread that smelled like rosemary. The host led me to a booth by the window, and I ordered a glass of red to steady my nerves. When he walked in, relief surged through me. He looked like his pictures, same tall frame, same mischievous smile, even the faint scar above his eyebrow. He wore a navy button-down, sleeves rolled casually to the elbows, forearms dusted with hair, veins visible in the glow of candlelight. Camilla, he asked brightly, sliding into the booth. It's Camila, I corrected, smiling. Right, Camila, he repeated, as if testing it. Beautiful name. It was a good start. His grin was easy, his voice warm. We ordered drinks and starters. Conversation flowed. I told him about copywriting, about how many hours I spent trying to make deodorant sound poetic. He laughed, shaking his head. He told me about digital marketing campaigns he ran, how much money brands wasted on influencers who didn't influence. Then it happened. So Carla, he said mid-sentence, without missing a beat. I blinked. Camila, I corrected gently. Oh, sorry. He chuckled. I know a Carla. Must have slipped out. I let it slide. Easy mistake. First date jitters. But minutes later. So Maria, tell me about your family. I stiffened. Camila, I repeated firmer. Right. He winced. You just look like a Maria, I guess. He smiled, trying to soften it. I forced a smile back, but a small crack had opened. The appetizers arrived. He reached across to offer me a piece of bruschetta, his fingers brushing mine. Here, try this, Cammy. I froze. It's Camila, I said again. Cammy's cuter, though. He winked, holding the bread closer. Like a nickname. Nicknames are intimate, don't you think? Something about the way he said intimate made my skin prickle. We ate, and he kept slipping. Sometimes it was Carla again. Sometimes Maria. Once he called me baby, which felt premature, a shortcut to familiarity he hadn't earned. Every correction I gave, he waved off with a sheepish laugh. When the entrees came, the wine had warmed me just enough that irritation started to surface. He cut into his steak, looked at me over the candle, and said, "So Carla, damn it, I mean Camila, you really are gorgeous. Like dangerously gorgeous. The kind of gorgeous that makes me wonder what you'd sound like saying my name in bed." I nearly choked on my salmon. "Excuse me?" He grinned, unbothered. "What? Too much?" "Sorry. Just being honest." I dabbed at my mouth with the napkin, pulse spiking. "Maybe dial it back a little." He laughed, raising his hands. "Hey, at least I'm not boring. You'd be surprised how many dates I've had where the girl didn't say a single thing worth remembering. At least you've got fire." I like fire. But his eyes were still misnaming me, even when his mouth didn't. Dessert menus arrived. Before I could say anything, he told the waiter, "We'll have the chocolate cake." "Carla loves chocolate cake." My fork clattered onto the plate. "It's Camila," I said sharply. He blinked at me, surprised by the edge in my voice. "Don't be so sensitive. It's just a name." My chest tightened. "It's not just a name. It's my name." The table around us seemed to hush, the clinking of cutlery a distant echo. He leaned back, smirking, as if I'd proven a point for him. "Fine," he said, dragging out the syllables. "Camila. Better? Honestly, you're sexy enough I could call you anything, and it wouldn't matter." That was it. I pushed my chair back, my heart pounding. "Actually, it matters a lot. I've told you 5 times tonight, and you still can't respect it. That's not fire, that's laziness. And I'm not interested in being someone else's Maria or Carla, or whatever name you decide to use when you're not paying attention." He held up his hands, laughing awkwardly. "Overreaction. Total overreaction. I'm bad with names, that's all. You're still gorgeous. Don't punish me for it." But I was already standing, slipping my bag onto my shoulder. "Good night, Rylan." He called after me, voice tinged with mockery. "See you, Carla. Or Maria. Or what was it again?" I didn't look back. The night air outside was cool, damp with the smell of rain. My phone buzzed before I even reached the corner. A message from him. Asterisk sorry, Carla. I mean Camila. Wait, was it Maria? Winky face, asterisk. I deleted it without replying. And as I walked, heels clicking against wet pavement, I whispered my own name out loud, just to remind myself that it was mine and mine alone. I stood in front of the mirror longer than I needed to, adjusting the neckline of my blouse until it fell just right. It wasn't a fancy restaurant, just a wine bar tucked between a florist and a laundromat, but I wanted to feel like I belonged in the kind of evening that ended with soft conversation and maybe the brush of a hand. His name on the app had been Dorian. I texted my friend Juno before I left. Location shared. Code word is grapefruit if it's bad. If it's good, I'll think of something later. The wine bar smelled like cedar and rosemary. The lighting was gold and forgiving, the kind that makes everyone look softer. I chose a corner table, ran a finger over the polished wood, and tried not to check my phone every 2 minutes. When Dorian walked in, I exhaled in relief. He looked like his photos, tailored shirt, slim build, a confidence in his step that didn't feel too heavy. He smiled when he saw me, and I thought maybe tonight. But 5 minutes in, I realized something was wrong. He was talking about his ex. Her name was Sabine. He dropped it within the first sip of wine. "Sabine always loved this place," he said wistfully, staring at the menu like it was a diary. I nodded politely. First dates sometimes carried baggage. Maybe he was easing into it. But then came the flood. "She and I were supposed to get married," he continued, not even glancing at me. "We'd picked out the venue. She wanted lavender on the tables. I said peonies." He chuckled, but it was a bitter sound. I sipped my glass, searching for a new subject. "So you travel a lot? You mentioned jazz." "Sabine hated jazz," he interrupted. "She said it was messy, unpredictable. God, that used to drive me crazy." "You like jazz?" I opened my mouth, but he was already scrolling through his phone, pulling up photos. "Look, here's us in Lisbon. That was our 3rd anniversary. She looks stunning, doesn't she?" On the screen, Sabine did look stunning, long hair caught in the wind, smiling at the camera like it belonged to her. I stared at her face while he narrated every detail of the trip. What they ate, the fight they had over directions, the night they made up. I tried to laugh gently. "Maybe we should talk about us?" He blinked, as though he'd forgotten I existed. Right. Of course. You remind me of her a little, actually. Your hair. The way you tilt your head when you listen. His eyes glazed over. You could almost be her. A chill crept down my spine. I'm not her, I said firmly. He didn't hear me. Or pretended not to. He leaned across the table, lowering his voice. You know what Sabine never did? She never understood me. She always wanted me to change. But you, his eyes softened in a way that made my stomach turn. You seem like you'd understand me. Maybe you could be my Sabine. The wine soured on my tongue. I thought of Juno, of the grapefruit code word. I reached for my phone, thumb shaking. Don't leave, he said quickly, eyes darting to my hand. Not like she did. Just give me a chance. You'll see. I'll treat you better than I treated her. There was something desperate in his tone, something both tender and terrifying. I stood anyway, fumbling with my bag. I think this was a mistake. He shot to his feet, knocking his chair back. A few heads turned. His face flushed red, and for a second I thought he might shout. But instead, he laughed, high and sharp. Of course you're leaving. Just like her. They always leave. The wine bar grew quieter around us, the gold light suddenly too bright. I mumbled an apology that wasn't mine to give and slipped out the door. The night air slapped my skin. My pulse thudded in my throat. I walked fast, too fast, until the bar was a blur of light behind me. My phone buzzed. A message from Dorian. I showed Sabine the photo I took of us. She's jealous now. Thank you. I stared at the screen, my stomach lurching. The app's block button never felt so necessary. When I finally reached home, I collapsed onto my couch, blouse wrinkled, eyeliner smudged, my head buzzing with the ghost of someone else's love story. I'd gone on a date with a man, but all he'd seen was a replacement. A stand-in. I'd been staring at my computer screen all afternoon, pretending to care about the quarterly sales report, but my mind was elsewhere. My cursor hovered over an empty email draft, yet my brain kept replaying the photos I'd scrolled through the night before. His name was listed as Nathaniel. Looking for someone who can out-sarcasm me. If you can win at Scrabble, I'll buy dessert. This is what his profile said. I was hooked. I'd swiped right, half expecting him not to. But he did. By the time the workday ended, I was too jittery to finish the report. I ducked into the bathroom to redo my eyeliner, brushed my curls until they obeyed, and smoothed down the burgundy blouse I'd worn with tonight in mind. It was nice enough to feel deliberate, but still office appropriate. The best kind of double agent. I sent a quick text to my friend Kala, meeting him now. Location shared. Code word is pumpkin if he's a creep. The dive bar was buzzing when I arrived. Low light, sticky floors, the smell of fried onions that clung to your clothes long after you left. I grabbed a booth in the corner, rehearsing possible greetings. Would I hug him? Shake his hand? Play it cool and wave? The door creaked open, and my heart did its wild little drum roll. A man walked in, scanning the room. I lifted my hand in a cautious wave. He spotted me and smirked. My stomach twisted. Because this wasn't Nathaniel. Not the Nathaniel in the photos, anyway. It was Craig, my boss's boss, the vice president of sales, the man who gave stiff speeches about synergy at Monday meetings, the man whose emails read like legal disclaimers, the man whose approval meant whether or not I'd get a raise next year. Small world, huh? He said as he slid into the booth, not waiting for me to speak. I sat there frozen, my mind scrambling to compute the joke. Maybe he just looked like him. Maybe this was some uncanny resemblance. But no, the smirk on his face told me everything. Craig was Nathaniel. Or Nathaniel was Craig. Either way, I'd been catfished. "You're on the app?" I stammered. He chuckled, flagging down the waitress like he owned the place. "What? You think executives don't get lonely too?" My throat felt dry. "But your profile." "Of course I didn't use my real name," he said smoothly, ordering us 2 beers. "Company policy and all that. Gotta keep things discreet." Discreet. My skin prickled. He leaned back, studying me in a way that made me feel like the quarterly report, a document to be reviewed and signed off. "You clean up nicely," he said, eyes dragging over my blouse. "Better than those office cardigans you usually wear." I wanted to sink into the cracked vinyl seat. Every fiber in me screamed to leave, but the weight of office politics held me there. If I walked out, would he retaliate at work? If I stayed, what game was I playing? He leaned closer. "Don't look so panicked. I'm not going to tell anyone." His voice dipped lower. "Unless you make me want to." The waitress returned with our beers, and I gripped mine like a weapon. My phone buzzed in my lap, Kala asking how it was going. I typed quickly, "It's my boss. This is bad." Craig, no Nathaniel, was talking about how he'd been promoted at 35, about how he'd earned his seat at the table. He sprinkled in little reminders of what he knew about me. "You make, what, 50-something? You probably don't want to blow it on cocktails. I'll cover it." Then a wink. My stomach curdled. He was weaving my professional life into this farce of a date, reminding me of the imbalance between us. I excused myself to the restroom, splashing water on my face. My reflection looked like someone trapped in the wrong movie, one where the villain didn't even know he was supposed to be subtle. I typed furiously to Kala, "Pumpkin. Pumpkin. Pumpkin." When I got back, Craig had shifted to my side of the booth. My heart stumbled. "Sit," he said, patting the seat beside him. I sat across instead. "Craig." He raised a hand. "Nathaniel tonight, remember?" He grinned, as though this was charming. "I should go," I said, reaching for my bag. He caught my wrist before I could stand. His grip wasn't rough, but it was firm. "Relax. You're overthinking. We're just two adults having a drink." His thumb pressed into my skin in a way that made my pulse jump. "Unless you want this to mean more, you'd be surprised what I can do for someone's career." The beer turned sour in my mouth. "I'm leaving," I said firmly, yanking my hand free. His smirk didn't falter. "Of course you are. Just remember, we'll see each other Monday." I left the bar in a blur, my heels clicking too fast on the sidewalk. My phone buzzed again. "Kala, do you need me to come get you?" I texted back, "No. Just need to breathe." That night, I lay awake replaying every word, every smirk. I thought about Monday mornings, about sitting 2 rows away while he clicked through a PowerPoint and pretended we hadn't shared a booth in a dive bar. When Monday arrived, Craig passed me in the hallway. He didn't say a word. Just a knowing glance, a ghost of that smirk, and then business as usual. I took longer in the shower than I ever normally do. The steam turned the mirror into a blurry dream, and I traced little futures onto it with my finger while the water cooled on my skin. I kept telling myself this one could matter, that tonight could be one of those stories you tell years later when people ask how you met. Her name was Marina. Even the name sounded like water, like something that shimmered in sunlight. I ironed a pale linen shirt that felt casual but deliberate, fastened the watch I usually saved for weddings or interviews, and rehearsed a few conversation starters in my head. Indie films, rooftop bars, the most spontaneous thing she'd ever done. I wanted to come across confident, but not like I'd been practicing in front of the mirror, which of course I had. Before I left, I texted my sister Liz. We had our system for online dates. Share location. Code word avocado, if things went bad. Code word cinnamon, if the guy or girl was worth keeping. She replied instantly, "Have fun, but don't forget you're allowed to leave if it sucks." That last line always stuck. The rooftop bar looked like her profile had come to life. String lights zigzagging overhead, low jazz curling through hidden speakers, the skyline pouring out in all directions like a spilled drink. I arrived 10 minutes early, because that's what anxious people call punctuality. I ordered a glass of Pinot Noir and tried to look like someone who belonged here. When the elevator doors opened, my chest did that stupid tight thing. Marina stepped out, and my imagination hadn't lied. She looked just like her photos, maybe even better. Her hair loose around her shoulders, a floral wrap dress that seemed made for wind. She spotted me right away and smiled. Relief flooded through me, until I realized she wasn't alone. There was a man behind her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in gym shorts and a hoodie that looked like it had been peeled off the floor of his bedroom. He walked like someone who already owned the space. Marina hugged me briefly, and then gestured at him. "This is Dean," she said, her voice bright. "He comes with me on first dates. Just a safety thing." "Oh," I managed, still trying to force my smile. "Hi, Dean." Dean didn't shake my hand. He dropped into the seat across from me, next to Marina, spreading his legs wide like it was his living room. "What's up, man?" he said. Then he flagged the waiter. 2 IPAs. And whatever he's having. I opened my mouth to say I was fine with the wine I already had, but the waiter nodded and left before I could. Marina smoothed her napkin into her lap like this was perfectly normal. "So," Dean said when the drinks arrived, "what do you do? And don't give me some boring corporate crap. Impress me." I laughed lightly, though it came out thinner than I wanted. "I'm a UX designer. I build." He cut me off with a groan. "So you make apps pretty. Marina, you hear that? He makes buttons look good." Marina laughed. Not hard, but enough to make my chest pinch. I tried to redirect the conversation toward her. So Marina, you said you love indie films. What's the last one you saw? Dean answered before she could. We saw Hereditary. I told her it was overrated, but she liked it. She's got a weak spot for creepy family stuff. He grinned at her like it was an inside joke. She giggled and shrugged. The waiter brought appetizers, calamari, sliders, truffle fries. Dean immediately grabbed the lion's share, chewing with his mouth open. You run? He asked me between bites. Yeah, a few miles most mornings, I said. He smirked. That explains the arms. He flexed one of his, huge and veiny, while Marina covered her mouth to hide her laugh. I excused myself to the restroom just to breathe. In the cracked mirror, my reflection looked pale, pulled tight like dough that had risen too long. I texted Liz, third wheel situation. Not avocado yet, but weird. When I came back, Dean had his arm draped across the back of Marina's chair. She leaned into it slightly. My seat felt colder than before. The bill came eventually, a number that made my stomach clench. Dean shoved it toward me without hesitation. Go ahead, champ. Gentleman's duty. Marina gave the smallest nod, like it was expected. My hands moved before my brain did, sliding my card into the folder. The waiter whisked it away. Dean raised his glass, grinning. To new friends. I clinked weakly. When the night wound down, Dean escorted Marina toward the elevator, his arms snug around her. She glanced back at me once with an almost apologetic smile. Thanks for dinner, Julian. This was nice. Dean clapped me on the shoulder, nearly knocking me forward. You're a solid dude. Keep hustling. Maybe one day you'll land someone like her. The elevator closed on their laughter. I stood under the string lights, wine buzzing unpleasantly in my veins, and stared at the city stretched out in glittering arrogance. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I opened the app. A message from Marina already blinked on the screen. Dean says you seemed nervous. Maybe next time you'll loosen up. I deleted the app without replying. Walking back down into the city, the fairy lights looked crueler than before, like stars you couldn't trust. And for the first time in a long time, I felt small. Not because of my arms, not because of my job, but because I had mistaken someone's profile for a promise. I should have trusted the little voice in my head when I saw Daniel's first message. Something about it felt too polished, too smooth. His opening line wasn't the usual "Hey, beautiful," or "What's up" that most guys fire off. Instead, it was a carefully constructed compliment about my energy, paired with a line about how he was searching for someone adventurous, open-minded, and ready for a real connection. It sounded flattering. It sounded different. And at the time, that was enough to hook me. Daniel's pictures didn't hurt either. He had that kind of clean, suburban attractiveness, sharp jawline, styled brown hair, button-up shirts against tasteful backdrops. A man who looked like he had his life together. His profile even mentioned he was married, but it was worded in such a vague, "We're liberated, we're free-spirited" way that I brushed it off. My brain told me it was probably nothing. Maybe he was separated. Maybe it was just a typo. When he suggested drinks at a low-lit cocktail bar downtown, I said yes. I spent an hour getting ready, more than an hour, really. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a fitted black dress and a leather jacket. My reflection looked more confident than I felt, but I told myself this was what dating was all about. Trying things, stepping into unknowns. The bar was already humming when I arrived. Jazz low in the background, glasses clinking, couples leaning close in booths. Daniel was waiting at the bar, drink already in hand, looking every bit as polished as his photos. He stood when he saw me, smile broad and welcoming. "You must be Emily," he said, voice smooth. "Even better in person." I flushed, sliding onto the stool beside him. For the first half hour, everything seemed normal. He asked about my job, my favorite books, my travel dreams. He listened in a way that felt attentive, his eyes steady on mine. I laughed more than I expected to. He ordered us another round. But there was a shift. A small one, subtle at first. His questions tilted. "So, are you adventurous?" he asked at one point, swirling the ice in his glass. I laughed nervously. "I like to think so." "Why?" His smile widened, but something about it made my stomach tighten. "Because my wife and I have been looking for someone just like you." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My brain scrambled, replaying his words. "Your wife?" I echoed. Daniel nodded casually, as if announcing his wife's presence in our date wasn't a grenade tossed onto the table. "Yeah, Emily. She's amazing. Gorgeous. You'd love her. I blinked, gripping my glass a little too hard. Wait, so this isn't what exactly? This isn't a date? He leaned closer, lowering his voice like we were conspirators. It's a date, sure, but it's also an opportunity. See, my wife and I, we've been married 7 years. Things are great, but we like to keep things interesting. We've been talking about finding the right person. Someone fun. Someone open. His eyes flicked down my neckline and back up, bold enough to make my skin crawl. When I saw your profile, I thought, yeah, she's perfect. The room tilted. My heart thudded hard in my chest, a mix of confusion, disbelief, and a sharp, rising anger. So, you're using dating apps to recruit women? Like I'm a what? A spice packet for your marriage. Daniel chuckled softly, as though I were overreacting. Come on, don't take it the wrong way. This isn't about using you. It's about sharing something amazing. My wife is incredible. You'd see that. We'd make sure you felt wanted. Treasured. He dragged out the last word, his tone dipping into something that made my skin prickle. I pushed back from the bar slightly, needing distance. That's not what I signed up for. He tilted his head, unfazed. I get it. It sounds wild at first. But trust me, you'd enjoy it. No strings, just pleasure. We've done it before, and every woman we've met, they loved it. They still text us sometimes. He smiled like this was supposed to reassure me. I could feel my face heating, not from attraction but from humiliation. People around us laughed and talked, completely unaware that I was sitting in the middle of one of the most bizarre, uncomfortable conversations of my life. You should have said that up front, I snapped. I thought this was just you and me. Daniel raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by my indignation. Well, I wanted to make sure we clicked first. No point in introducing you to Emily if the vibe wasn't right. But I think it is. Don't you? He leaned in, too close, his breath warm with whiskey. You've got the look she likes. Dark hair, confident. She'd eat you up. My stomach churned. The way he said it, like I was prey being lined up for consumption, made bile rise in my throat. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loud against the floor. I'm not interested, I said firmly, grabbing my bag. He chuckled again, like I was playing hard to get. Don't rush to judge. Just meet her once. If you don't vibe, no problem. But if you do, his eyes gleamed. You'd be surprised what doors it could open. Not happening. I stood, my legs shaky but my voice steady. He raised his glass in mock salute as I turned to leave. You'll think about it, he called after me. The night air outside was a slap of cold reality. I sucked in deep breaths, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. My phone buzzed almost immediately, a new message from Daniel. It read, Emily says hi. She'd love to meet you. Attached was a picture, a woman with striking blonde hair, smiling wide beside him, her arm looped around his. They looked like a perfect couple, glossy and bright. And yet, the message made my skin crawl worse than anything else. I deleted it without replying. My chest still burned as I walked to my car, heels clicking against the pavement like gunshots. On the drive home, I replayed the night over and over. How normal it had seemed at first. How careful he'd been, laying the trap. How quickly it had turned. And underneath the anger, there was a flicker of something else, shame. Not because of what he'd offered, but because I'd almost bought into the illusion he sold. The illusion of a genuine connection. He'd reeled me in with the promise of romance, only to reveal I was just a variable in someone else's equation. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes too bright, like I'd just survived something I didn't fully understand. The truth settled heavy in my stomach. Dating in this world wasn't just about awkward dinners and mismatched chemistry. Sometimes it was about people who saw you not as a person, but as an accessory to their own desires. I promised myself, then and there, that I'd trust the little voice next time, the one that whispered warnings in the quiet. Because once the mask slips, once you see what someone's really after, there's no unseeing it. I don't know why I agreed to a beach date. I'm not much of a swimmer, and I've always carried a quiet fear of the ocean. There's something about the endless water, the way the horizon swallows everything, that makes me feel fragile. But when Arlen suggested it, this charming, sun-browned guy with a smile that seemed built for summer, I said yes. It sounded spontaneous, fun, and a little daring. I wanted to be the kind of person who could go with the flow. That morning, I stood in front of my closet, pulling out swimsuits I hadn't touched in years. Most were too bright, relics of vacations I'd never repeated. I settled on a dark blue bikini, something understated, paired with a light wrap I could ditch once I worked up the courage. I packed sunscreen, a towel, and a bottle of water. My stomach fluttered with nervous energy as I drove to the coast, the salt tang creeping into the air long before I reached the beach. The place was alive with noise and color. Umbrellas dotted the sand like wildflowers, children shrieked in the surf, and radios hummed with half-heard songs. I spotted Arlen easily, tall, broad-shouldered, shirtless already, his skin golden in the sunlight. He waved, flashing that grin, and I found myself smiling back despite the churn in my stomach. "You made it," he said as I approached, his voice carrying above the crash of waves. "Perfect day for it, huh?" "Yeah," I lied, slipping off my sandals, the sand already hot under my feet. We laid our towels side by side, his movements easy, like he'd done this 100 times. He offered sunscreen, joked about not wanting to burn, and I laughed, trying to relax. For a while it was pleasant, just sitting there listening to the surf, watching families scatter across the shoreline. But Arlen was restless. He kept glancing at the waves, then back at me. Finally he grinned. "Come on, let's get in. Water looks amazing." My throat tightened. "I'm not the strongest swimmer," I admitted. He shrugged, playful. "We'll stay close. It's just for fun. Don't worry, I'll be your lifeguard." I hesitated, then nodded. I didn't want to seem like dead weight on a first date. He took my hand briefly as we jogged across the sand, the water lapping cool and sharp against our ankles. At first, it wasn't so bad. The waves were gentle, foaming around my knees. The sun shimmered off the water, dazzling, almost hypnotic. I splashed him, he splashed me back, and for a moment, I felt like a kid again. But Arlen kept moving deeper, beckoning me with a grin. "Come on. It's better out here," he called. I followed, heart thumping. The water reached my waist, then my chest. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but the push and pull of the current grew stronger. Each step forward felt like a negotiation with something much larger than me. And then, almost without warning, the bottom disappeared. My foot went down expecting sand, but there was nothing, just cold emptiness. I flailed, swallowing a mouthful of salt water, panic spiking as I realized I'd drifted into a deeper pocket. "Arlen!" I gasped, thrashing. He was a few feet away, laughing, slicking his wet hair back, oblivious. "Relax. Just float," he shouted, as if it were that simple. But my body didn't know how to relax. My arms windmilled, desperate to keep my head above water. The waves slapped into my face, each one stealing more air. My legs kicked wildly, but the current tugged me farther out, each pull stronger than the last. The noise of the beach dulled, replaced by the roar of blood in my ears. I tried to scream again, but salt water rushed into my mouth, choking me. My chest burned. For a split second, I had a clear, brutal thought. This is how it ends. Right here, on a stupid first date. I caught a glimpse of Arlen, still closer to shore, still not moving toward me. He didn't see it. He didn't hear it in my flailing arms or sputtering coughs. He was just standing there. My strength faltered. My body dipped, water closing over my head. The world went murky, green-blue and muffled. I kicked, clawed upward, broke the surface with a ragged gasp, but another wave crashed instantly over me, filling my nose, my throat. I was drowning, right there in front of dozens of strangers, and nobody seemed to notice. Then suddenly hands. Strong hands, gripping my arm, hauling me upward. A voice close to my ear. "I've got you. You're okay. You're okay." A lifeguard. His red float bobbed beside us as he dragged me toward shore, his strokes sure and practiced. I coughed, sputtered, clung to him like a lifeline, because he was. Each second stretched impossibly long, but the sand eventually rose beneath my feet again, solid and blessed. We stumbled into the shallows. I collapsed onto the wet sand, choking, my lungs searing with every breath. The world spun, people staring, murmuring, but all I could do was curl forward, hands gripping the earth like it might vanish. The lifeguard knelt beside me, calm, steady. "You're safe. You inhaled some water, but you're breathing. Just take it slow." I nodded, tears mixing with seawater on my cheeks. When I finally looked up, Arlen was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Not frantic, not shaken, just detached. "You okay?" he asked casually, like I'd tripped on the boardwalk instead of nearly drowned. Something in me snapped. I wanted to scream, to demand why he hadn't noticed, why he hadn't moved. But my voice was broken, shredded from salt and panic. All I could manage was a hoarse, "You didn't even see me." He shrugged. "Thought you were playing around." The lifeguard shot him a glare sharper than any words. She wasn't. Then he turned back to me, softening. Drink some water when you can. Rest. Don't go back in today. I sat there for a long time, the sun still bright and cheerful, mocking me with its warmth. People went on with their beach day, as if nothing had happened. But inside, I was trembling, every nerve still wired to the terror of sinking. Eventually, I wrapped myself in my towel, gathered my things, and walked off the sand without a word to Arlen. He didn't follow. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the smell of salt still clinging to my hair, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Had fun today. We should do it again. I stared at the screen, hollow laughter rising in my chest. Fun. I'd stared down the ocean's throat while he stood idly by. And he thought I'd want more. I deleted his number and turned off my phone. The image of water closing over my head replayed again and again in the darkness, but so did the feel of the lifeguard's hand, strong and certain, pulling me back toward life. I realized then that fear and instinct had spoken louder than anything Arlen could have said or done. My body had known the truth before my brain caught up. Some people are worth clinging to when the waves rise. Others will just watch you drown. I'd told myself I wasn't going to get nervous this time. I'd been on enough awkward first dates to know the routine. A little small talk, a little laughter, and most of the time, nothing more. But that evening, as I stood in front of my mirror adjusting the straps of my dress for the 100th time, there was a knot in my stomach I couldn't quite name. His name was Liam. We'd only been talking for a few weeks, but he had that easy kind of charm in messages, never too much, never too little. He didn't overshare, didn't send walls of emojis, didn't disappear for days. He'd suggested Indian food for our first meet, which felt like a good sign. Casual but not lazy. Somewhere warm and loud enough to fill silences. I slipped on my heels, grabbed my bag, and headed out. The curry house smelled incredible the moment I pushed open the door. Garlic, spices, sizzling onions. The walls glowed with gold paint and dim lanterns, the tables humming with couples and families. Liam was already there, tucked into a booth at the back, waving me over with a grin. He looked better than his pictures, sharper jawline, darker eyes. But what caught my attention wasn't him. It was the enormous duffel bag sitting on the seat beside him. I laughed nervously as I slid into the booth. Wow, moving in already. He smirked, patted the bag. Just some work stuff. Don't mind it. That should have been the end of it, but the bag was massive, black, and bulging in odd shapes. The kind of thing you'd expect to see tossed into the trunk of a car, not dragged into a restaurant. I tried to shake it off as we ordered poppadoms and drinks. He was funny, relaxed, talking about his favorite bands, asking about my job. I kept nodding, smiling, but my eyes kept darting back to that bag. Halfway through our starters, Liam excused himself to the bathroom. Be right back. Don't eat all the mango chutney. He winked, then disappeared into the crowd. The bag sat there like it was watching me. My heart thudded. I told myself not to be ridiculous. Maybe it was gym equipment, or photography gear, or something harmless. But curiosity dug its claws in. Before I could talk myself out of it, I reached over and tugged at the zipper. The sound seemed deafening in the low chatter of the restaurant. I pulled it open just enough to peek inside. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. Coils of duct tape, a roll of thick black trash bags, gloves, a hammer, shiny and out of place against the soft fabric, a wrench. My stomach lurched. This wasn't gym gear. It wasn't photography equipment. It looked like a kit for something awful. My pulse hammered in my ears. I yanked the zipper shut, hands shaking so badly I nearly caught the fabric in the teeth. I shoved the bag back into place and sat frozen, staring at the table, my breath coming too fast. People around me laughed, clinked glasses, tore into naan bread. Nobody else knew I was sitting here staring at the remnants of what looked like a murderer's shopping list. What if it was innocent? What if he was a builder? A handyman? What if I was overreacting? But then why bring it here? Why drag a duffel bag full of tools and tape to a date at a restaurant? The bathroom door swung open. My head snapped up. Liam was walking back, smiling, wiping his hands on a paper towel. I panicked. I mumbled something about needing to make a call, grabbed my bag, and slid out of the booth before he reached the table. He frowned, confused, but I didn't stop. I pushed through the crowd, muttering sorry as I bumped chairs, and burst into the cool night air outside. The street was buzzing, neon signs glowing, cars honking in the distance. I walked fast, heels clattering against the pavement, every nerve in my body screaming, "Don't look back." But I did. Through the window, I saw him standing by the booth, staring at the door, his expression unreadable. The duffel bag sat beside him, zipped tight, waiting. I turned the corner and didn't stop until I was inside my apartment, door locked, lights blazing. My phone buzzed with a message minutes later. "You left quick. Everything okay?" I stared at it, heart pounding. I didn't reply. I don't know what was really in that bag. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I panicked over nothing. But I can still see the shine of that hammer, the glint of tape in the dim restaurant light, the way it all looked so deliberately packed. I polished my sneakers twice before heading out that night. Not because I thought she'd be staring at my shoes, but because it felt like the right kind of ritual for a date I wanted to go well. My nerves always found dumb little tasks to obsess over, and tonight that meant white soles without a single scuff. The mirror in my hallway reflected someone who looked far too confident for how shaky I felt inside. Dark jeans, a simple shirt, hair styled just enough to look like I hadn't thought about it for an hour. Her name was Lena. She'd been funny in messages, quick-witted in a way that made me grin at my phone in public, which is no small feat. She had this way of throwing little teases into the conversation without it feeling cruel. I liked that. Her voice notes had been playful, soft with a laugh at the edges. She mentioned loving animals a few times, which made me imagine someone warm and grounded. I pictured a dog lover, honestly. The kind of woman who throws a ball in the park and laughs too loudly when the dog comes back covered in mud. I'd grown up with dogs, so the idea of someone who loved them too felt comforting, like common ground. So there I was, sneakers spotless, head buzzing with anticipation, telling myself this could actually be something. Not just another drink with someone who already had 3 backup plans lined up, not just another polite conversation where the silence stretched longer than the laughter. I wanted to believe Lena might be different. The restaurant was cozy, candlelit, the kind of place that made you lower your voice without realizing. I got there early, sat down at a small table by the wall, and ordered water to keep my hands busy. Every time the door opened, my pulse jumped. And then she walked in. She was pretty in a sharp way. Black hair pinned up in a messy bun, eyeliner drawn with precision, lips painted a deep red that made her teeth look impossibly white. She wore a black dress, simple but confident, and carried a leather tote bag that looked heavier than it should have. When she saw me, her whole face lit up with recognition, and for a moment I thought, yes, this could work. We hugged, awkward but warm, and she slid into the chair across from me. The waiter brought menus, but before I could even ask how her day had been, she reached into the tote and pulled out a photo album. Thick, glossy, covered in a sparkly pink fabric sleeve. "I brought this for you," she said, sliding it across the table with both hands, like it was an ancient artifact. I blinked. "Oh, wow. What's this?" She leaned in, eyes shining. "This is Mr. Buttons." I opened the album. Page after page of a fluffy gray cat, staring into the camera with that blank, slightly malevolent look cats always have. Mr. Buttons curled up on a pillow. Mr. Buttons in a cardboard box. Mr. Buttons on a windowsill, staring at pigeons. I forced a smile. "He's very photogenic." She laughed, delighted, like I'd passed a test. "Isn't he? He's my soulmate. You'll love him." And just like that, dinner turned into a shrine service. For 2 hours, no exaggeration, Lena narrated every detail of Mr. Button's life. His favorite brand of kibble. His bowel schedule. The time he needed stitches on his paw because he'd heroically fought the neighbor's terrier. She described the exact way he liked his belly rubbed, demonstrated on the tablecloth with both hands while I sat there, nodding like an idiot. I tried to steer the conversation a few times. Asked about her job, her hobbies, her favorite travel spots. Every single answer curved back to the cat. She worked long hours, but it was okay, because Mr. Buttons was always waiting at the door. She loved hiking, but only if Mr. Buttons was safe with a sitter. Her dream trip was Italy, but she wasn't sure she could leave Mr. Buttons for that long. At one point, she actually said, "Sometimes I feel like he's more than a cat. Like he's my little husband." She said it with a straight face, sipping her wine like she hadn't just shattered my ability to make eye contact with her. And then it got worse. Halfway through her second glass, she pulled out her phone. "Do you want to see him live?" Before I could answer, she hit dial. She had the cat on FaceTime. The screen lit up with a grainy view of a living room, and there he was, Mr. Buttons, perched on the arm of a couch, staring into the phone like he knew I was the competition. "Say hi to Darius," she cooed, waving at the screen. "Say hi, baby." I forced a wave. Hi, Mr. Buttons." She beamed at me. "Isn't he just perfect?" The cat blinked slowly. Yeah, perfect," I muttered. For the next 10 minutes, she shoved the phone across the table, making me chat with the cat. She giggled every time I said something. I felt like I was auditioning for the role of stepdad to a furry demon who clearly wanted me dead. At some point, I stopped even pretending to smile. My face hurt from forcing it. My eyes darted toward the exit. I kept glancing at the waiter, silently begging him to bring the check, to spill water, to do anything that would let me escape. Lena noticed. Her laughter cut off mid-giggle, and her eyes narrowed. "You're not smiling enough at Mr. Buttons." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" She leaned forward, suddenly serious. "He can tell. Cats sense energy. And you're not giving him the energy he deserves." My stomach flipped. I wanted to laugh it off, but the intensity in her eyes made me freeze. Maybe I'm just a little tired." She shook her head, disappointment written all over her face. "Mr. Buttons is everything to me. If you can't even smile at him," she trailed off, lips pressing into a thin line. I swallowed hard, muttered something about an early morning meeting, and stood. She didn't stop me, just watched as I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the door. The cool air outside hit me like salvation. I walked fast, sneakers squeaking faintly against the pavement, heart pounding as if I'd just escaped a cult initiation. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed. A new message. From Lena. "Mr. Buttons didn't like you. This won't work." I stared at the screen for a long time, equal parts horrified and relieved. Then I laughed, loud and bitter, the kind of laugh that comes from sheer disbelief. And that's how I learned that sometimes you're not just dating the person across the table. Sometimes you're dating their delusions. And sometimes their delusion has whiskers. There are bad dates, and then there are bad dates that make you question your own sanity. And the worst part isn't even the awkwardness, or the disappointment, or the wasted eyeliner. It's the sheer, creeping weirdness that follows you home and leaves you lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering if you've just survived something you shouldn't have. That's the kind of date I had with a man named Alder. Yes, Alder like the tree. And yes, he managed to make even that sound pretentious. The night didn't start badly. It rarely does. I'd done the usual ritual, glass of wine while I got ready, stared at my closet like it was a hostile witness, finally settled on jeans that made my ass look good and a red top that said, "I'm trying, but not too hard." I curled my hair, dabbed perfume on my collarbone, and told myself not to be nervous. This was just drinks. Just a Tuesday night. Nothing to freak out about. When I got to the bar, Alder was already there, leaning against the counter with his hands in his pockets like a man waiting for a film crew to start rolling. He had that self-satisfied look, the kind of smirk that says, "I already know you're impressed." And I'll admit it, I was. At first. He was tall, his jawline looked sharp enough to file papers on, and his voice had that low, gravelly timbre that makes you wonder what it sounds like when he whispers dirty things in your ear. We ordered drinks, and he was charming enough. Told stories about traveling through Europe, eating truffle pasta in Rome, drinking absinthe in Prague. He talked with his hands, gesturing so widely I half expected him to knock over my glass, but I found myself leaning in anyway. He had that magnetism that makes you want to ignore the warning bells in the back of your head. Halfway through my second drink, he leaned close and said, "I live just around the corner. Want to come by? Just for one more glass of wine." Now this is the point where any rational adult should hesitate, should weigh the risks, should at least Google how to avoid ending up in a Dateline episode. But 2 cocktails in, with his hand brushing mine, rationality was not my strong suit. So I said yes. His apartment was exactly what you'd expect. Dimly lit, pretentious decor, bookshelves stacked with titles he probably hadn't read past the first chapter of. A record player sat in the corner, already spinning some obscure jazz album. The air smelled faintly of incense, like he'd tried too hard to make it seem effortless. We sat on the couch, another bottle of wine magically appeared, and he poured us both glasses. We talked. We laughed. We kissed. And for about 20 minutes, it was almost normal. Almost. Then I noticed it. Muddy footprints. At first, I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But no, there they were. Dark, damp, muddy footprints on the hardwood floor, trailing from the front door to the hallway. I said, pulling back from his kiss. "Did you track something in?" He glanced over casually. Oh, don't worry about that. But I did worry about that. Because they weren't his footprints. His shoes were clean, sitting neatly by the door. And these prints were wet. Fresh. Who? I started. He cut me off with another kiss, harder this time, like he could distract me with tongue. For a second, I let him. But when I opened my eyes again, I swear I saw movement in the hallway. Just a flicker. Just a shadow. Do you have a roommate? I asked, pulling back again. He smirked, sipping his wine. Not exactly. Not exactly? What the hell does that mean? I tried to laugh it off, but my stomach was tightening. So, are you going to tell me why there are muddy footprints in your apartment? He leaned closer, his lips brushing my ear. Maybe I like to keep the door open. Let people wander in. Makes life more exciting, don't you think? Reader, I did not think. I stood up, heart pounding. Okay, that's weird. I should probably go. But he grabbed my wrist, gently but firmly, and said, Relax. Stay. You're too uptight. I pulled my hand back. No, really. I should go. That's when I heard it. A creak. From the hallway. Like someone stepping on an old floorboard. I froze. He just smirked, like this was all part of some game. Seriously, I said louder this time. Who else is here? And then I saw her. A woman. Standing in the hallway. Barefoot, clothes rumpled, hair messy like she'd just woken up. She didn't say anything. Just stared at me. My blood went cold. I stammered. You didn't mention company. Alder shrugged. I like to keep my options open. That was it. That was my breaking point. I grabbed my bag, bolted for the door, and didn't look back. I didn't care if my heels clicked like gunshots on the stairs. I didn't care if he called after me. I just ran. When I finally made it outside, I gulped the night air like I'd been drowning. My hands were shaking as I called a cab. I didn't even look back at the building. Later, lying in bed, replaying it all, I couldn't stop seeing those footprints. Wet, muddy, fresh. Leading straight into his apartment. Leading straight to me. I should have known the night was going to test me when I found myself standing in front of the mirror, practicing a smile that didn't look like fear. Not fear of the date, exactly, but fear of the venue. When Leah had texted me earlier in the week with, "How do you feel about fun fairs?" I made the fatal mistake of answering, "Love them. Can't get enough." Which was the biggest lie I'd told since telling a doctor once that I only had the occasional drink. I am not, in any sense of the word, a funfair person. Ferris wheels are tolerable, ghost trains are kitschy, but anything that spins or launches me upside down is basically a stomach pump waiting to happen. But Leah, well, Leah was the type of girl who looked like she might have been raised on roller coasters. From her photos, you could see she had that fearless grin, the kind that said she'd jump off cliffs for fun or go skydiving on a Tuesday just to avoid being bored. She had tattoos peeking out from her sleeves, a wicked smirk, and when she wrote "adrenaline junkie" in her profile, I thought it was just one of those ironic things. Turns out, not ironic at all. So there I was pulling on my most casual jacket and praying that my stomach had the strength of an Olympic athlete. Leah arrived glowing, denim jacket over a red crop top, hair in a messy bun that still looked like art. She hugged me like we were already old friends, and her perfume smelled faintly of citrus and danger. "Ready?" she grinned, already tugging my sleeve towards the entrance gates. "Born ready." I lied, my guts whimpering like puppies. The fair was alive in technicolor, neon lights, the sweet stink of cotton candy, grease and sugar mixing with the metallic clatter of rides. Music blasted from speakers, barkers shouted over each other, and every few seconds some poor soul screamed bloody murder from a steel contraption overhead. Leah inhaled like she was breathing in paradise. "God, I love this," she said, eyes glittering. First ride, the Vortex. The Vortex was essentially a giant spinning pendulum that swung people in loops until they either saw God or vomited into the crowd below. I wanted to fake a heart attack on the spot, but she was bouncing on her toes, eyes locked on me. "Hell yes," I said, as if I'd been dreaming of this moment. The harness clicked shut around me, my body welded to the seat. Leah grabbed my hand, her grip warm, steady, while my knuckles turned ghost white. "Don't close your eyes," she teased. "You'll miss the best part." The ride launched. My organs relocated to my spine. Blood whooshed into my skull, and then out again. Leah screamed with delight, hands in the air like she was conducting an orchestra of chaos. I screamed too, though mine sounded less ecstatic and more dying goat. When the ride screeched to a halt, she hopped off like it was a warm-up stretch. My legs wobbled like cooked spaghetti. That was amazing, she laughed. Let's do the twister. The twister was basically a giant washing machine for humans. I tried to suggest maybe something gentler, like winning her a stuffed bear, but she was already queuing. So I dragged my sorry body behind her. One ride became 5. Roller coasters, spinning cages, things that dropped us from the sky like broken elevators. By ride 3, my stomach had filed for divorce. By ride 4, I was sweating in places I didn't know could sweat. Leah kept laughing, throwing her arms in the air, shrieking with joy. I laughed too, but mine came out like a man at his own funeral. She was radiant, alive, electric, and I was holding onto the safety bar like it was my will to live. Between rides, she insisted on snacks. You have to balance sugar with adrenaline, she explained, shoving a stick of cotton candy at me. I managed a bite, though my stomach begged for mercy. The worst, though, was the cyclone, a ride that spun us horizontally while tilting at angles that defied physics. As soon as it started, I knew my time was numbered. I clenched every muscle known to man, praying I wouldn't decorate Leah with recycled hot dog. She hooped, hair flying, while I kept my jaw locked shut. When it ended, I staggered off like a soldier returning from war. Leah beamed. You're so much fun. Most guys chicken out after 2 rides. Oh yeah, I croaked. Total thrill seeker, me. But my stomach had other plans. Halfway to the next roller coaster, I bent double, hand over my mouth, and let out the most undignified retching sound. Luckily, I found a trash bin before disaster struck the pavement. I vomited like my soul was leaving my body, while neon lights flashed overhead like a cruel disco. Leah rubbed my back. Oh my God, are you okay? Fine, I gasped, eyes watering. Just celebrating in my own way. She laughed, though it was kind and not cruel. You should have told me you weren't into fairs. I wiped my mouth with a napkin some kind stranger handed me. I didn't want to seem boring. Her face softened. Boring? Dude, you came on every ride with me. That's not boring. That's brave. I blinked at her, still sweating, stomach convulsing. So you're not disappointed? She shook her head, her bun coming loose in the breeze. Nah, honestly, I like you more for trying. Most guys would have faked a phone call by now and left. We ended the night on a bench overlooking the fairground. She bought us bottled water, and I sipped mine like it was holy nectar. The rides roared around us, the air buzzing with the chaos I couldn't stomach, but she thrived on. She leaned against my shoulder, warm and casual. Next time, she said, we'll do something you love. Maybe a movie or a pub quiz. Something where you won't end up dry heaving into a bin. I laughed weakly, but it was real. That sounds perfect. She nudged me. But I'm still impressed you lasted that long. Honestly, I think you set a new record. As we walked out, her arm looped through mine. I realized I'd survived something brutal. Not just the rides, not just the vomit, but the temptation to fake being someone I wasn't. She'd seen me at my absolute weakest, sweaty, pale, puking, and still chose to laugh beside me. Later, lying in bed, I could still feel the ride spinning in my skull, my body swaying like it hadn't caught up with the ground yet. My stomach was a war zone, my throat raw. But my phone buzzed with her message. Asterisk next time you pick. Just no fares. Winky face, asterisk. And for the first time that night, I smiled without pretending. I told myself I wasn't nervous, just energetic. That's the lie I tell when I've checked my bag 3 times for the same lip balm, compact mirror, and packet of mints. It's my ritual before dates. Polish myself up so that even if the night ends in chaos, at least my eyeliner is symmetrical. His name was Rowan. Online, he was quick with jokes, warm, funny, self-deprecating. We messaged for weeks, and his voice notes had that gravelly, radio presenter quality that made the most boring story sound charming. He suggested a cocktail bar, dark enough to confess crimes but classy enough that you can't order a Jaeger bomb. I arrived early, of course. The bar was intimate, velvet stools, low jazz, citrus, and sugar in the air. I ordered sparkling water to calm myself. Rowan texted, train hell. 5 minutes, which meant 12, but I forgave him the second I saw him stride through the door. Tall, slightly messy hair, stubble that looked styled even if it wasn't. He hugged me hello, smelled faintly of spice and warmth, and slid onto the stool beside me like the night already belonged to him. 2 old fashions, he told the bartender, then winked at me. Actually make one a double. Long day. I hadn't agreed, but my protest drowned in the noise of his confidence. We clinked glasses. The bourbon burned in the best way, and he sighed like it was medicine. He downed half before I'd taken a polite sip. "So," he said, knee brushing mine, "tell me the highlights reel." The banter flowed. He was magnetic, quick stories, animated hands, the kind of man who fills silence without trying. But he ordered a second drink almost before the first was gone. Then tequila shots to chase the bourbon. I laughed nervously and followed along, already calculating whether fries would save me later. Rowan didn't sip, he inhaled. Each glass was a checkpoint, each checkpoint a louder Rowan. He was charming, then boisterous, then just sloppy. He retold the same Barcelona bar crawl story twice, didn't notice when I reminded him, and laughed too loudly when I did. We slid into a booth. I ordered fries. He ordered a whiskey flight like it was a spiritual pilgrimage. For neat glasses, lined up like soldiers. "You're meant to taste those slowly," I said. "I am tasting," he replied, knocking back the first in one gulp. By the third, I knew food wouldn't catch up with him. The longer he drank, the thinner the fun veneer became. His jokes about his boss had an angry edge. His stories about his exes weren't funny so much as bitter. He kept touching my knee, his thigh pressed into mine, his voice dipped into lines about my dangerous eyes. Compliments twisted into warnings. "Maybe slow down?" I suggested softly. "Let's order real food." "Water is for plants," he laughed. When he went outside for fresh air, he returned smelling of smoke, triumphant, with another whiskey he'd charmed out of the bartender. His grin was glossy. "See, I'm a big boy. I hold it well." He didn't. The slurred edges sharpened into something meaner. When I suggested we get a cab, he snapped. "I'm not a child. Don't manage me." His smile was still plastered on, but his jaw was tight. "I'm not managing you," I said carefully. "I'm trying to make sure you get home safe." "You think I'm a mess," he accused. His hand gripped my wrist, not cruel but firm. "Don't talk to me like you know me." My heart kicked. I stood slowly, steady. "Rowan, let go." He did, after a beat too long. His face shifted, anger, hurt, betrayal, all scrambled into one drunk scowl. The bartender appeared like a guardian angel. "Mate, let's get you a taxi." Rowan sneered. "How about another round instead?" The bouncer arrived, calm but immovable. "No more drinks. Time to go." Rowan puffed up, tried to make it a joke. "Unbelievable." He jabbed a finger at me, but stopped himself from finishing the thought. "You're unbelievable." He was herded outside, wobbling but pretending it was swagger. A taxi pulled up. He glared at me through the window, glassy-eyed. "You think I'm broken," he muttered just for me. "I think you're drunk," I replied softly. The cab swallowed him whole. Red taillights smeared across the wet street. Back inside, the bartender handed me water and packed the leftover fries for the road. I nearly cried at the kindness. I walked home, showered until the smell of bourbon and smoke was gone, and ignored the string of messages buzzing on my phone. First, sorry if I was loud. You're beautiful. You smell like Sunday mornings. Then, you embarrassed me. I'm not a child. Finally, you don't know what my week was like. I blocked him before he could spiral further. In the morning, the dress on my chair looked like it had been to a party I wasn't invited to. I opened the paper bag, ate the fries cold, and decided hope is stubborn but not stupid. I'll keep dating, but next time my body whispers too much, I'll listen the first time. Deep been humming all day, nerves buzzing through me like caffeine. My best friend had laughed at me earlier when I called her for outfit advice. "Riley, you're acting like this guy's the last man on earth," she teased. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't help it. Something about Kyle's profile had hooked me. He wasn't the usual gym flex in the bathroom mirror type, or the mug of beer with the lads in Ibiza type. His bio had been quirky, almost charming, cinema lover. Hopeless romantic. Life's better with popcorn. I pictured a guy who could quote a little Tarantino here, sprinkle some Meg Ryan rom-com there, but still hold down a conversation about, actual life. Movies had always been my safe place. Dimmed lights, shared popcorn, the quiet thrill of two people leaning closer in the dark. So when Kyle asked me to meet him at a wine bar downtown, it felt promising. I chose a black dress, nothing flashy but flattering, and spritzed perfume at my wrists. In the mirror, I practiced a smile that didn't look desperate, but didn't look bored either. Somewhere between approachable and mysterious. The bar was already humming when I arrived. Candles flickered, people laughed softly. The air smelled of roasted garlic and spilled Merlot. I found a table near the back and texted him I'd arrived. My phone buzzed back almost instantly. "On my way, kid." Weird sign-off. But I brushed it off. Maybe just his way of being playful. Then he walked in. Tall, messy hair that looked like it had been styled to look messy, dark jacket over a t-shirt with some faded movie graphic. His eyes scanned the room, landed on me, and lit up. For a second, my stomach did that stupid flip it always does when someone hot looks directly at me. He walked over, grinning, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Here's looking at you, kid." I laughed. Okay, cute. A Casablanca opener. I could roll with that. "Hi," I said. "Nice to finally meet in person." He slid into the seat across from me, still grinning like he'd nailed the audition. "You talking to me? You talking to me?" I blinked. A taxi driver line. Delivered with an exaggerated squint. I chuckled politely. "Yeah, I'm talking to you." He leaned back, clearly proud of himself. "I'll have what she's having." I glanced at the empty table between us. No drinks yet, no menus even. The "when Harry met Sally" reference was premature at best, but I let it go. Maybe he was just nervous. The waiter came by, asked what we wanted to drink. I ordered red wine. Kyle looked at the guy and said, "Shaken, not stirred." Do you mean a martini, sir?" the waiter asked. Kyle winked. "Exactly." The waiter wrote it down with the weary expression of a man who has seen too many bad James Bond impressions in his career. Once we were alone again, I tried to steer the conversation somewhere normal. "So Kyle," I said brightly, "what do you do for work?" He pointed at me with both hands like a bad game show host. "Life finds a way." I stared. "Sorry? You know Jurassic Park? Jeff Goldblum." He chuckled at his own delivery. "Right, but like, what's your actual job?" He leaned in, lowering his voice like he was about to tell me something profound. "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." I sipped my wine the moment it arrived, praying the alcohol would blur the edges of this nightmare. The rest of dinner was like being trapped in a trivia night with someone who only knew one category. Every single question I asked, family, hobbies, favorite food, travel, was met with another quote. "Any siblings?" "Luke, I am your father." "Do you cook?" "Say hello to my little friend." He mimed holding a gun, making pew-pew noises until the couple at the next table glared. "Favorite holiday destination?" "There's no place like home." I forced a smile, laughter bubbling in my throat not from amusement, but from sheer disbelief. He wasn't just referencing movies, he was speaking entirely in them. When the waiter brought appetizers, Kyle raised a fork dramatically and declared, "You can't handle the truth," before stabbing at the bread like it had personally wronged him. At one point, he dropped his napkin and, when I leaned down to pick it up, muttered, "Nobody puts baby in a corner." I froze mid-reach. My entire body wanted to evaporate. Somewhere between the main course and my second glass of wine, I tested him. "So, what are you looking for in a relationship?" He clasped his hands together, eyes narrowing like he was preparing for the academy. Then, in a low voice, he whispered, "You complete me." I nearly choked on my pasta. The worst part? He delivered it with such conviction, I half wondered if he thought he was being romantic. By dessert, my patience had dissolved into a puddle. He tried feeding me a spoonful of creme brulee while whispering, "Say hello to my little friend" again, and I pushed the spoon away before he could smear custard on my face. "Do you ever speak normally?" I finally asked, sharper than I'd meant. He leaned across the table, eyes gleaming, and whispered, "You can't handle the truth." That was it. That was my limit. I set down my fork, grabbed my purse, and stood up. He didn't even try to stop me. He just raised his glass in a mock toast, quoting after me as I stormed out. "Here's Johnny." The cool night air outside hit my face like a blessing. I walked fast, heels clicking against the pavement, trying not to laugh and cry at the same time. Back in my apartment, curled on the couch, I checked my phone. A new message from Kyle. Just 2 words, "I'll be back." I threw my phone across the couch, buried my face in my pillow, and groaned so loud my neighbors probably thought I was having sex. But no, it was worse than bad sex. It was worse than silence. It was a date spoken entirely in dialogue stolen from someone else's script. And the terrifying thought struck me as I drifted into wine-soaked sleep. What if his whole life was like this? What if tomorrow he woke up, looked in the mirror, and said, "You had me at hello?" I double-checked my reflection in the rearview mirror for what felt like the 10th time. Lips fine, hair fine, shirt collar behaving itself. It wasn't like I was about to walk into a Vogue photo shoot, but still, tonight mattered. Devin, the guy I'd been messaging for weeks, had that polished, gym-honed energy. His profile had been a string of tight-smiled, abs-on-display photos with captions like "Discipline is everything" and "Winners don't quit," quitters don't win. Normally I'd swipe left on that level of self-promotion, but there was something charming buried under all the flexing. At least, I thought there was. He'd picked a nice place for our first date, a sleek little wine bar with fairy lights strung overhead and waiters who all looked like struggling actors. I told myself this was promising. A guy who spends that much time in the gym could have easily chosen a protein bar or a salad counter. The fact he wanted wine. Maybe he had depth. Maybe he wasn't just about the mirror. I parked, reapplied my lipstick in the car, and took a deep breath. A good sign. I was nervous. Nervous meant I cared. Nervous meant I was hopeful. And then Devin arrived. He didn't so much walk in as enter like a trailer reveal. Tight shirt, white, clinging like a second skin. Biceps the size of hams. Jeans cut low enough to suggest he'd measured exactly how far down they needed to sit to showcase his obliques. His hair was perfect. His tan glowed. And the first thing he did, before even saying hello, was pull out his phone. "Hold on," he said, raising a finger like he was halting a crowd. "Lighting's insane right here." He twisted, angled the phone, flexed his jaw, tilted his head, and snapped 3 shots in quick succession. I sat there, standing awkwardly by the host's stand, my hand hovering for a handshake or a cheek kiss that never came. "Riley, right?" he finally asked, slipping the phone into his pocket without breaking stride. He leaned in for a kiss on the cheek, but not before checking his reflection in the glass door behind me. "Yep," I said, trying to sound casual. "That's me." He grinned. His teeth were perfect, like bleached piano keys. "You look good. Way better than your pics." Thanks." I tried to laugh, but something about that phrasing didn't feel like a compliment. We were shown to a table near the window, cozy, with candles flickering low. Devin pulled out his phone again, before even sitting down. Wait, don't move." He angled his chair. "This light's unreal right now." Another round of selfies. Chin down, smirk up, flexed forearm. Snap, snap, snap. I sat quietly, fiddling with the napkin, while the waiter hovered awkwardly in the background. Finally, Devin tucked his phone into his lap. "Sorry, had to grab those. Followers go wild for this angle." "Oh, you're an influencer?" I asked, half joking. He chuckled. "Nah, just, personal brand. You gotta curate it." Curate it. Like he was a museum exhibit. We ordered drinks, white wine for me, whiskey neat for him. I was just about to ask about his work, his hobbies, his life, when his phone appeared again. "Let's get one together," he said. "Now?" "Yeah. Come on, this is cute." He slid in next to me, his arm draped heavily over my shoulder, his phone angled high. He tilted his jaw, lips pursed. "Okay, pout a little." I tried. God help me, I tried. But the flash caught me mid-blink, the angle was awful, and suddenly I looked like a startled raccoon next to a fitness model. He checked the photo, frowned. You should have sucked your cheeks in a bit more. Want to try again?" My wine arrived. I downed half of it in one gulp. For the next 20 minutes, conversation was impossible. Every time I asked him something. "So, what do you do? Where'd you grow up? Favorite books?" He gave me vague, half-distracted answers while flipping through his camera roll. "Oh, I do some PT stuff, a little trading on the side, nothing serious." Click. "Yeah, I'm from near Manchester originally, but the lighting's better in London." Click. "Books? Nah, I'm more about visuals. Words are kinda outdated, don't you think?" Click. I wanted to scream. When the food arrived, pasta for me, steak for him, he immediately whipped out his phone again. "Wait, don't touch it." He stood up, rearranged the plates, adjusted the candles, shifted the salt shaker. Then he angled his phone, muttering, "Gotta get the vibe." Snap. 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 The waiter returned to refill our glasses, and Devin actually stopped him. "Wait, don't pour yet. You're ruining the shot." The waiter gave him a look I'll never forget, a mix of pity, contempt, and the quiet rage of someone earning minimum wage. I tried to salvage the evening. "So, what's the most fun trip you've ever been on?" Devin chewed a bite of steak, flexed his jaw deliberately, swallowed, and said, "Ibiza. Unreal shots. Sunset selfies, pool flexes. Whole feed blew up." "Right," I said. "But like the experience?" "Oh yeah, sure. But the content, though." He trailed off, already checking his reflection in the spoon. Halfway through dinner, he asked me to hold his phone at a better angle, while he pretended to take a sip of wine. I became his unpaid photographer, taking 20 pictures of him smirking at his glass while he critiqued my framing. No, higher. You're making me look short. Try again, but get the bicep in." "Okay," Now candid, like I'm laughing at something hot you just said. By dessert, I was done. Absolutely, irreversibly done. When he tried to set up the phone against the salt shaker to record himself eating tiramisu, I finally snapped. Devin, I said, are you here to date me or your reflection? He didn't miss a beat. He smirked at the phone lens and said, both. That was it. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out, leaving him mid-bite, mid-pose, mid-swoon over himself. Hours later, I checked Instagram out of morbid curiosity. And there it was, his latest post. Him at the restaurant, shirt tight, eyes smoldering. The caption, another fan dinner. Hashtag lucky her. I zoomed in on the background. You could just barely see me, blurred, half turned away, already reaching for my bag. I closed the app, tossed my phone across the bed, and buried my face in my pillow. The smell of wine clung to my hair, the echo of his constant camera shutter ringing in my ears. I thought about his parting words, both, and shuddered. Because if I'd stayed, I wasn't sure he'd have remembered my name, but I knew he'd have remembered the lighting. I ironed my shirt that night. Actually, no, I ironed it twice. The first pass was rushed, the kind of job where the sleeves still have a crease and you tell yourself, it's fine, nobody will notice. Then I thought of Jenna, and suddenly fine didn't feel good enough. She'd been the type online to talk about standards. Good vibes only, her bio had said, along with a smiley face emoji that was probably meant to be cute but, in my head, read like a warning. So, I gave the shirt a second pass until it was crisp. Blue cotton neat buttons, the kind of shirt that said, I tried but not too hard. I even polished my shoes, something I hadn't done in months. Tonight wasn't just dinner. Tonight was the chance to impress someone who, based on her profile, had a taste for things that were exceptional. She'd written a lot about restaurants, cocktails, rooftop views. She'd used the word elevated 3 times. I thought that was funny, in a slightly pretentious way, but also alluring. When I got to the restaurant, a trendy brasserie with glowing amber lights and a wine list longer than my work contract, I checked my reflection in the window one last time. The shirt was crisp. The shoes shone. My breath didn't smell of onions. We were set. And then Jenna arrived. She was stunning. Tall, dark hair pulled back into a glossy ponytail, wearing a black dress that looked like it was sewn directly onto her body. She had this way of walking, heels clicking, hips swaying, like she was auditioning for a perfume commercial. For a second, I thought I'd nailed it. I thought, this is going to be one of those nights where people stare and think, how the hell did he land her? She kissed me on the cheek, air kiss, no contact, just a waft of perfume. Then she sat down, crossed her legs, and gave the menu a look like it had personally insulted her. Oh my God, she muttered. What's wrong? I asked, nervous already. This place. She wrinkled her nose. The lighting is awful. Look at this, so yellow. It makes everyone look like they have jaundice. Do you want to look like you've got liver failure? Because I don't. I laughed lightly. I think it's atmospheric. It's depressing, she snapped back, snapping her fingers at the waiter before I could even take my seat properly. The waiter approached with a smile. Good evening, welcome. Hi, yes, water. Sparkling. And make sure it's cold, not tepid. Last time I came somewhere like this, they gave me lukewarm sparkling water, can you believe it? Absolutely disgusting. The waiter nodded, jotting notes, and left. I smiled awkwardly, trying to smooth it over. So, I said, how was your day? Awful. She didn't miss a beat. Traffic was horrendous, my boss is incompetent, and don't even get me started on the weather. Honestly, I don't know why I bothered coming out. Well, I'm glad you did, I offered, trying charm. She didn't smile. She picked up the cutlery, inspected it like she was about to conduct a hygiene test, and sighed. Do you see this? A smudge. Right there. This is meant to be a nice place. I can't stand when people cut corners. I tried to joke. Maybe it's just extra seasoning. She gave me a look so cold it could have frozen the wine list. The waiter returned with water, poured it into 2 glasses, and stepped back politely. Jenna took 1 sip and spat it back into the glass. Ugh. Warm. I knew it. She shook her head. Excuse me, she called, snapping again. The poor waiter returned, his smile just slightly tighter. This is unacceptable, Jenna said. I specifically said cold. Are you trying to ruin my night? I wanted to crawl under the table. My cheeks burned. I muttered something about it being fine, but she shot me another dagger look. It's not fine, Marcus. Standards matter. That word again. Standards. We ordered reluctantly, She huffed through the menu like every option was an insult. Why do they have so much seafood? Don't they know some people hate fish? Ugh. I guess I'll have the risotto. No mushrooms, no cream, extra garlic. And if it's not piping hot, I'm sending it back. When the waiter left, I tried again to salvage conversation. So, you like Italian food? No, she said flatly. Too heavy. Carbs just make me bloat. You know how disgusting it feels, trying to be sexy when you're bloated? Like carrying around a balloon full of pasta in your stomach. Horrible. I nearly choked on my water. Sexy? Was she trying to sound sultry, or just reminding me she expected to look flawless at all times? Either way, it was said with the kind of bitterness that made me feel guilty for ever enjoying a plate of spaghetti. The starters arrived, bruschetta for me, a small salad for her. Ew, she said, poking at the leaves. This lettuce is wet. Like actually wet. Did they even pat it dry? This is amateur. It's salad, I offered. It's disgusting, she corrected. Meanwhile, I took a bite of my bruschetta. Crunchy bread, ripe tomatoes, garlic, basil. Heaven. I smiled without thinking. Why are you smiling? She snapped. Because it's good? You're easily pleased, aren't you? I laughed awkwardly. Is that a bad thing? Yes, she said. It means you accept mediocrity. I can't stand men like that. The meal became a minefield. Every dish, every sip, every flicker of candlelight became something for her to complain about. The bread was too warm, probably microwaved. The butter was too cold, impossible to spread, a sign of laziness. The wine was cheap, I could taste the sulfates. I started drinking faster, just to get through it. At one point, she leaned across the table, her cleavage framed perfectly in her low-cut dress, and hissed. Do you know what the worst part is? This entire place is trying to be sexy and failing. It's like bad foreplay. Too much effort, not enough execution. Makes me feel dry just sitting here. I nearly spat wine across the table. Did she really just compare a restaurant to foreplay? Loudly? With the couple beside us clearly listening? The main courses arrived. My chicken was tender, seasoned beautifully. Her risotto looked fine to me, creamy, steaming. She took one bite, pulled a face, and immediately waved down the waiter. This is revolting, she declared. Undercooked rice. Tastes like glue. Do you even try back there? The waiter, bless him, offered to replace it. She refused. No point. You'll just ruin it again. She pushed the plate away, folded her arms, and sulked. I kept eating my chicken because, frankly, I was starving and had paid too much already. Unbelievable, she muttered. You're really going to eat that? After everything? Yes, I said softly. She shook her head. Pathetic. By dessert, I was ready to run. She ordered nothing, declaring, I don't eat sugar, it makes me break out. I ordered tiramisu because at that point, I needed something sweet to erase the bitterness of her company. She sneered. Do you know how many calories are in that? You might as well lube it up and rub it straight onto your thighs. The table next to us actually snorted into their drinks. I wanted to die. When the bill came, she didn't even glance at it. You've got this, right? She said, scrolling on her phone. I paid. Of course I did. Outside, in the cool night air, I thought maybe I'd escape politely, thank her, end it with a handshake. But Jenna wasn't finished. You know, she said, leaning in, you'd be attractive if you had higher standards. But clearly you don't. And that's a turnoff. I nodded, muttered something non-committal, and walked away. I brushed my teeth twice before leaving the flat. Not once. Twice. First with the usual mint paste, then a quick rinse, then again with whitening paste, because I wanted to feel extra fresh. I even carried gum in my bag, just in case. I'd told myself this date mattered, even though technically it was just dinner with a stranger named Trevor. But he'd called himself a foodie in his messages, the kind of guy who knew his way around cuisines, who respected flavor, who loved meals not just for sustenance but for experience. I'd been picturing something cinematic, two people leaning over a candlelit table, sharing bites, laughing about who stole the bigger forkful, that kind of thing. When I stepped out into the night air, I felt a shiver of nerves under my red dress. It wasn't a ball gown or anything, just simple, with straps that showed my shoulders and a skirt that was playful but not too short. I wanted to look like someone worth lingering over, someone Trevor might savor the way one savors a perfectly cooked meal. The restaurant was a trendy little bistro tucked down a cobbled street in town. Dim lighting, low music, polished glasses catching the glow of candle flames. It was all very promising. I arrived a few minutes early and stood by the entrance, rehearsing little lines in my head, the usual small talk. When Trevor walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a boyish grin and dark stubble that probably looked accidental, but was definitely cultivated. His shirt was half unbuttoned, his chain glinting in the dim light, and he had that casual confidence that made me think, yes, this could work. "Alina," he said, his voice booming just a little too loud for the intimate room. "That's me," I smiled. He leaned in and kissed the air beside my cheek, the faint scent of cologne brushing past. Strong, but not suffocating. So far, so good. We were led to a table near the back, tucked away but still within sight of the kitchen's swinging doors. I loved that kind of energy, watching waiters sweep past with trays, the occasional shout of service from the chefs. It made me feel part of something alive. Menus were handed out, and Trevor immediately clapped his hands together like a child on Christmas morning. "Oh, I've been dying for a steak all day," he said, grinning at the waiter before the man had even introduced the specials. I giggled. It was enthusiastic, sure, but enthusiasm is good. He looked at me, his eyes sparkling. "Do you like steak?" "I do," I nodded. "But I was thinking of trying the sea bass tonight. I've heard it's really good here." "Sea bass, eh?" He slapped the table. "Adventurous. I like that." We ordered a bottle of red, at his insistence, and some starters, then settled into conversation. He told me about his job in construction management, about his gym routine, about his love for spicy food. His voice was loud, but it wasn't unpleasant. I found myself leaning in, smiling. Maybe this would be the kind of date where I went home glowing, where I replayed moments in my head and blushed. Then the food arrived. Trevor's steak was massive, seared perfectly with charred edges, blood pooling under the meat. My sea bass came glistening, resting on a bed of greens. It was beautiful. Trevor didn't hesitate. He grabbed his knife and fork and attacked the steak like it owed him money. The first cut was fine, clean, precise, but the way he shoved the meat into his mouth made me pause. He chewed with his mouth wide open. Not a little. Not discreetly. His lips stretched, his jaw worked, and I could see the meat breaking down between his teeth. The sound, wet, squelching, almost obscene, filled the small space between us. "MMM," he moaned, specks of juice glistening on his chin. "God, that's good." I tried to focus on my sea bass. One delicate bite, chewed quietly, swallowed. That's how it should be. But every time I looked up, Trevor's mouth was on display. He chewed like he was in private, like nobody else existed. A bit of steak clung to his lip, and when he spoke, it flew free, landing near his wine glass. "So Alina," he said, still chewing, "what do you do for work?" The burp slid right out mid-sentence, wet and unapologetic. My eyes widened. "Sorry, babe," he laughed, pounding his chest. "Natural digestion. Means I'm enjoying it." I smiled tightly. "Right." I sipped my wine and prayed for distraction, but Trevor only grew louder. Every bite was an assault. He slurped his wine like soup, burped after nearly every mouthful, and kept licking his fingers even though he had cutlery. The table beside us turned to glance. I sank into my seat, cheeks burning. At one point, a string of fat slid down his chin. He didn't wipe it. He let it glisten until it dripped onto the tablecloth. "So you like to travel?" he asked, his mouth half full. "Yes," I said softly. "I've been to Italy recently." He shoved another chunk of steak into his mouth. "Oh, Italy. Pasta, pizza, wine." Burp. He didn't even excuse himself this time. He just smirked, like it was part of his charm. The waiter arrived to clear our starter plates and hesitated at Trevor's mess. The splattered juice, the grease stains, the discarded fat bits. Trevor grinned at him. "Compliments to the chef, mate. This is heaven." Then he belched again, long and loud, right in front of the poor guy. "Sir," the waiter said tightly, "can I get you another napkin?" Trevor waved him off. "Nah, I've got 10 fingers. They'll do." By then, I wanted to crawl under the table. I tried to keep polite, to salvage some dignity. But Trevor wasn't done. When he finished his steak, he leaned back in his chair, stretched, and rubbed his stomach with both hands. "Oh yeah, that hit the spot." Then, with a wicked grin, he grabbed his empty glass, tilted it up, and slurped the last drops of wine so loudly that the room went silent. And then came the final blow. He belched. Not a small burp. Not an accident. A deep, guttural, room-shaking belch that rattled the glasses on our table. Heads turned, forks paused midair, conversation stopped. Trevor winked at me, grease still shining on his chin. "Bet you like that, huh?" I blinked, my jaw slack. "Excuse me?" "Come on," he laughed, leaning in. "That was a good one. Admit it." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. His grin faltered. What? You don't like a man who's comfortable in his own skin? I didn't answer. I grabbed my bag, muttered something to the waiter about settling the bill, and walked straight out into the night. My phone buzzed hours later. It was Trevor. Next time we'll share ribs, extra messy. I stared at the message, shuddered, and deleted his number. I thought I was playing it safe when I spritzed just a touch of aftershave across my jawline before heading out. Not too much, not too little. Just enough so that if Clara leaned in, she'd notice. She'd even said in one of her messages that she had a sensual taste in fragrances. That stuck with me, made me imagine something subtle and intimate, something like wildflowers or vanilla on bare skin. The kind of scent that pulls you closer without you even realizing it. So I checked myself twice in the mirror, smoothed down my shirt, and reminded myself this was supposed to be fun. Just coffee mid-afternoon casual. No pressure. The cafe was buzzing when I walked in. People tapping away on laptops, couples murmuring over pastries, the steady hum of the espresso machine in the corner. It smelled like warm beans and sugar, that comforting coffeehouse scent that almost feels like a hug. I picked a table by the window, figuring it would be easy for Clara to spot me. I just pulled my phone out to double-check the time when she walked in. Or rather, when her presence walked in before she even crossed the threshold. The smell hit first. Heavy, cloying, the kind of perfume that doesn't just float through the air, but claims it. Like sweet syrup and crushed roses soaked in alcohol, thick enough to taste. I actually coughed before I even realized why, my throat scratching as the door swung shut behind her. Heads turned, a few customers wrinkling their noses. And then I saw her. Clara. Petite, blonde, with a smile that seemed genuine enough, except she was practically trailing a cloud. Every step she took pushed the scent forward, a wave that crashed over every table she passed. Jonah, she called out brightly, eyes locking on me. I forced a smile, already bracing as she slid into the chair across from me. The perfume poured over the table like invisible smoke, drowning the coffee smell I had loved just seconds ago. Hi, I managed, trying not to sound like I was choking. She leaned in, her eyes sparkling. Don't you love how intoxicating I smell? I swallowed hard. Intoxicating was one word for it. Suffocating was another. Yeah, I croaked. It's noticeable. Her grin widened as if I'd complimented her. She pulled her scarf off, and somehow that made it worse. The perfume rose in a fresh puff, clinging to the air. I tried to hold my breath subtly, nodding along as she talked about her drive over, about how much she loved this cafe because of the ambience. I could barely follow a word because all I could think about was the chemical taste coating my tongue. The waiter arrived, eyes watering, and asked what we'd like. Clara ordered a cappuccino and a slice of cake. I ordered water. Just water. My throat felt coated in syrup. When the drinks arrived, Clara leaned closer, so close her perfume seemed to press itself against my skin. So Jonah, what do you look for in a woman? She purred. I blinked, distracted by the sting in my eyes. A kindness. Humor. I cleared my throat, which only made it worse. Someone who doesn't overwhelm a room. She laughed, clearly taking it as flirtation, and reached across the table to touch my hand. Her sleeve brushed my wrist, and suddenly I smelled like her. My skin carried it instantly, like it was seared into me. I shifted back in my chair, desperate for oxygen, but she leaned forward again. You should come closer. Don't be shy. You can smell me better this way. My stomach turned. People at nearby tables were staring, some with thinly veiled annoyance, others hiding chuckles behind their cups. I caught a man at the next table mutter to his friend, Christ, it's like she bathed in it. Clara didn't notice. Or maybe she did and simply didn't care. She was in her own perfumed bubble, giggling and brushing her hair behind her ear. Every move sent another puff of that unbearable sweetness into the air. I nodded, pretending to listen, but my head was buzzing. It felt like I'd swallowed a candle shop. My water did nothing to wash it down. At one point, she tilted her head and said, You're not smiling enough. Don't you like me? I forced a grin, my lips dry. I think I need some fresh air. Just for a second. Her expression shifted, briefly confused, then playful. Don't take too long. I stood up too quickly, nearly knocking my chair back, and pushed through the cafe door into the street. The rush of cold air hit my lungs like salvation. I bent over, hands on my knees, sucking in breath after breath of clean oxygen. My shirt, though, reeked. Her perfume clung to the cotton like it had been woven in. I didn't go back inside. I couldn't. I texted her some weak excuse about feeling unwell and called it a night. Hours later, when I finally crawled into bed, I pressed my face into my pillow and gagged. The scent was still there. In my hair, in my clothes, on my skin. It had followed me all the way home, refusing to let me go. I lay awake, wondering if I'd ever breathe normally again, or if Clara's perfume would haunt me like some ghost I'd accidentally agreed to meet for coffee. I should have known Sam was going to be a handful the second he suggested a museum for our first date. Don't get me wrong, I love history. Old castles, cobblestone streets, even those tiny little plaques that no one else stops to read. I can get lost in that stuff. But the way Sam messaged about it, it wasn't the casual, let's check out an exhibit. It was paragraphs about Roman coins, medieval weaponry, Saxon burial sites. He practically foamed at the mouth describing how incredible the museum was, how authentic it would feel walking side by side past relics that had shaped the world. His enthusiasm seemed harmless, even charming, when I read his messages at midnight with a glass of wine in hand. After all, dating apps are full of men who can't string 3 words together. At least Sam had passion. But passion, as it turns out, can curdle. The morning of the date, I spent too long on my outfit, worrying that I'd look too casual among Roman busts and Tudor armor. I went with jeans and a cream sweater, sensible but cute, paired with boots that wouldn't click too loudly on marble floors. I met him outside the grand stone entrance of the museum, where he was already bouncing on his heels like a kid about to open presents. "Haley," he grinned, pushing his glasses up his nose. "You look perfect, ready to step back in time." His energy was overwhelming, but I smiled and nodded. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of dust and polish, the kind of scent that screams, history lives here. Sam walked with a spring in his step, pointing out every detail. The carvings on the banister, the dates on the admission plaques, the worn edges of the tiled floor. "This floor has seen centuries of feet," he whispered, almost reverently. "Imagine kings, queens, maybe even Cromwell himself, walking right where we are." It was oddly endearing. For about 10 minutes. We started in the Roman section. Glass cases lined the walls, filled with coins, pottery, shards of old tools. Sam pressed his face almost against the glass, muttering facts under his breath like he was on a private tour with himself. I tried to keep up, nodding, pretending to be as fascinated as he was. But then came the first moment that made my stomach tighten. He touched the glass. Flat palm, pressed hard, as though he was trying to absorb the object through sheer contact. "Sam," I said softly, "you're not supposed to touch." He chuckled. "It's fine. I just want to feel the energy. Can you imagine the hands that held these?" Before I could answer, a uniformed guard appeared. "Sir, please don't lean on the glass." Sam gave him a dismissive smile. Of course. We moved on, but the unease stuck with me. In the medieval section, Sam's obsession intensified. He leaned so close to a sword hilt, I was afraid his breath would fog the glass. He muttered about metallurgy, battlefields, and the artistry of death. I tried to joke, to lighten the mood. "You sound like you should be leading the tour," I teased. He grinned. "Maybe someday I will." Then, before I could stop him, he reached into an open display, a low barrier around a stone relic, and stroked the edge of the weathered artifact with his fingertips. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Sam," I hissed. Another guard was there in seconds. "Sir, do not touch the exhibits. This is your final warning." Sam looked offended, like a genius being scolded by a child. "It's a stone that's been outside for 1,000 years. A little touch won't hurt it." The guard's expression hardened. "Touch it again, and you'll be escorted out." I wanted to sink into the floor. People were staring now. Families, couples, even a group of schoolchildren giggling behind their teacher. My cheeks burned with humiliation. We moved along again, but Sam didn't seem chastened. If anything, he seemed energized by the conflict. He whispered to me as we passed a case of Viking jewelry. "They're too uptight. These things were meant to be held, to be worn. History should be touched, not locked away." I gave him a tight smile, praying he'd rein it in. But of course he didn't. In the Egyptian wing, Sam's hand darted out before I could even register it, brushing the edge of a carved sarcophagus lid. This time, the guard didn't bother with a warning. "Sir, that's it. Out. Now." The words hit like a thunderclap. Heads turned. A ripple of whispers passed through the gallery. Sam's face twisted with indignation. "This is absurd," he barked. "Do you know how much I've studied this? Do you know how much I respect this culture? I probably know more about these artifacts than half your staff." "Sir," the guard repeated firmly, "you need to leave. Right now." Sam turned to me, his eyes wide, pleading. "Haley, tell them I wasn't hurting anything." I froze, caught between embarrassment and disbelief. My lips parted, but no words came out. What could I possibly say? That it was fine for him to paw at relics thousands of years old? Out! Now! The guard's voice left no room for negotiation. Sam huffed, shouldered his bag, and stormed toward the exit, his footsteps echoing against the marble. I followed a few paces behind, my face hot, my body tense, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. Outside, the cold air hit like a slap. Sam turned to me, his face flushed with outrage. "They're tyrants in there," he ranted. "Tyrants. History doesn't belong behind glass. It belongs to the people." I crossed my arms, keeping my voice calm even though my insides were churning. "You embarrassed me in there." He blinked, genuinely stunned, as though my reaction was the betrayal, not his behavior. "Embarrassed you? I was standing up for authenticity. Don't you get it? That was passion." I shook my head slowly. "That was stupidity." He opened his mouth, but I didn't wait to hear more. I turned on my heel and walked toward the bus stop, leaving him standing on the museum steps, still shouting about injustice and the gatekeeping of history. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from him. I almost didn't look, but curiosity got the better of me. It read, "You'll regret walking away. One day you'll wish you'd been part of something real." I deleted it without replying. And then I blocked his number, his profile, his everything.